Dan or whoever, are you going to make a presentation for us?
You've been living it.
I know my breath is just. Thanks, guys, for coming. Dano, just so you know, our regular meeting starts at 6, and we're going to have this whole room full of kids like we do. We give awards to them, so we don't want to get too far behind, but if you could maybe give us like 15 of the 30 minutes, and then council could have some time to ask questions, and if we go over, we just go over, but we have these little kids waiting on us.
Thank you, and I'll try to be brief and keep everything at a...
That mic is just for the TV, it doesn't affect us.
Back off that a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of a sudden he was, I saw him go like this.
We call it...
Dan, hey Dan, he's like this.
Check. All right, well, thanks for inviting Angela Henderson and me to be here at your work session tonight. We just want to give you an overview of some things that are happening at RAFTA. We're going to try to get out to all of our member jurisdictions at least once a year and try to give them a little bit of a heads up about some of the things we've been working on. Can I have the next slide, please? In terms of what we're going to be discussing tonight, we'll give you a little bit of overview of RAFTA, what we do. We want to talk about the access control plan that we've been working on for the last week or so. No, actually it's been longer than that. It's been over a year. And talk about our strategic plan and our integrated transportation system plan, and then our long-range financial forecast. And I'm going to, again, try to be as brief as I can as I go through this agenda. Next slide, please.
Dan, can I just throw out, I know that Rick has wanted to have this work session for quite a long time, and he's stepped out for a second, but I think one of the things he wanted you to focus on a little bit was the access control plan, so I don't know how much time we have to spend on everything else, but if he was here, I'd ask him if that was the case, but keep going.
Okay. Well, if I can just go through the presentation, and we can come back to the access control plan. I mean, I want to be informal, but I also want to respect your time, so
Okay.
This is just a map of our region, and the blue dots represent our member jurisdictions. The orange dots and Garfield County are not members, but we do serve all the way from Aspen to Rifle. Next slide, please. This is just an overview of RAFTA, and we're the second biggest transit system in the state, and we're the first system, rural system in the United States to implement a BRT system. There's some statistics there about what we do. You have that in your packet. I won't get into that so we can save more time. Next slide. We provide a variety of services. The main part of what we do is to provide commuter services in the Highway 82 corridor and in the I-70 corridor. Then we contract with the City of Aspen to provide their municipal transit services, and with the City of Glenwood Springs to provide their services, and we also contract with the ski company. We do the Maroon Bells bus tour. It was very popular. We had record ridership last summer, about 150,000 passengers, I think, on that service. Next slide, please. We also support the X Games. The only way that you can get to Buttermilk is on transit, and we just had the X Games last month, and we had one day, the Saturday, where they have the majority of the events, and we provided over 50,000 rides system-wide on that one day. A typical big day for us would be more in the range of about 20 or 22,000 passengers. Next slide, please. And so we get to the access control plan. Next slide. As I said, we have been working on this update now for probably the better part of a year. We got a grant to purchase the corridor, or at least the Roaring Fork Railroad Holding Authority got a grant back in 1997, and as a requirement of that grant, we need to update this access control plan every 5 years. However, the last time we updated it was 2005. So we got busy with the implementation of BRT, and we kind of deferred that update, and we started working on it again in 2014. And then we ran into a little bit of opposition to the plan because jurisdictions that were planning to do crossings, public crossings of the corridor, were concerned about how much it might cost if they met our standards, and whether or not they would be able to implement these crossings within their budgets and so forth. And so we got into a full court press in terms of doing public outreach. We had a bunch of meetings in all of the jurisdictions with the elected leaders. We had open houses. We formed a work group with the staffs of the jurisdictions that are our members to go through the access control plan and try to find language that was more acceptable to people, more workable for everybody. And that process probably lasted somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 or 6 months, I think. And then we brought the plan back for adoption to the board, I think, in October of last year. And the board said, why don't we defer doing this until maybe March of 2016? And we got some additional comments after we responded to probably 20 or 30 pages of comments that we got on the original version. And we're still in the process of responding to the second group of comments that we got from Garfield County, from City of Glenwood Springs, and Town of Carbondale. And our plan is to take the access control plan back to the RAFTA board at our March 10th meeting for a first reading, just to say, okay, here we are. We've responded to the second group of comments. We've made some other adjustments to the access control plan. Are you comfortable with us forwarding this to a second reading so that we could adopt it in April and leave about a 30-day additional comment period and a public hearing notice so that the public can weigh in April if they have any remaining concerns about the access control plan? But the plan, the main difference about it is that we're emphasizing the need to preserve the corridor's rail bank status. When the corridor was acquired, the Roaring Fork Railroad Holding Authority applied to the Surface Transportation Board and asked to have the corridor rail banked, which in essence means that you have all the rights, privileges, and obligations of an active rail corridor, but you don't have to provide freight rail service. And you can convert the trail or the corridor to trail use, and you can reactivate it for freight rail service in the future if you want to. But one of the requirements is that you need not to do something that would preclude your ability to reactivate it for freight rail service. So when we start talking about public crossings of the corridor, and we've really not had any significant ones since the corridor was purchased back in 1997, we have to be careful, we think, not to allow the design of that crossing to create some type of unfunded obligation that RAFTA would have to address in the future if it wanted to reactivate the corridor for freight rail service. So, for example, if somebody wanted to do an at-grade crossing and it didn't really mess up the alignment of the rail bed or the grade of it, that's probably okay. We can work with communities to make those kinds of crossings happen. But let's say they wanted to put a cut through the corridor and in essence create some kind of a gap there and lower the grade of it, or somehow alter the curvature or the alignment in such a way that if we wanted to reactivate freight rail service, there might be a significant cost for doing so, then we're not really comfortable with that. Because the more of those kinds of things we get, the easier it is for somebody to make a case that we don't have any intention of reactivating freight rail service ever, because we have no plan to fund those corridor repairs in the future. So what we tried to do in our plan was make it clear to the working group and all of the jurisdictions that really had concerns about crossings that we're really okay with at-grade crossings. And we will work with the local governments and public crossing project sponsors to get their crossings approved. They also have to go to the PUC, though, and get the PUC to approve them, which is not a big deal, especially if RAFTA is willing to support them on the crossing. So that's kind of where the main controversies come down, and I think the other big issue that some of the folks who are planning crossings, and that would be Glenwood Springs and Carbondale currently, is if they build a crossing, excuse me, I think I'm okay now. If they build a crossing, how long can it stay there? You know, they would like to have easements for their crossings so that they would be assured that these crossings are going to be permanent. We believe that we can give them an agreement or a long-term license agreement that will give them all the assurances that they need that these crossings can remain there for almost all time, but it gives us the flexibility if we were going to reinstitute freight rail service, which is not necessarily all that likely, but we might want to do passenger rail service, that we have the flexibility of moving that crossing around. And most likely, if we had to grade separate it or invest a significant amount of funding to improve that crossing, that would be on the overall rail project and not on the, you know, the municipality that had built the grade, you know, the at-grade crossing initially. So at this point, those are the two major areas of concern. Is one, whether or not people can do at-grade crossings, and two, whether or not those crossings can stay there long-term and they can have some assurances that RAFT is not just going to willy-nilly or unilaterally come in and say, hey, you know, we want you to move your crossing out of here after they've invested a considerable amount of money to do so. When we present this at the March 10th meeting, what we will be asking is that the board to kind of approve it for second reading, which would happen in April. And it will take a unanimous vote of the 7 original members of the Roaring Fork Railroad Holding Authority. So that's everybody on the current RAFTA board except Newcastle. And if we can't get a unanimous vote, then the 2005 Access Control Plan still remains in effect. And it has just about all the same provisions that the current version does. And if people are concerned about the current version or the proposed update, then they have concerns about 2005 too, because they're both very similar. So that's that. I can move on to the rest of the presentation. We can come back to that, or if you want to take that now, if you have questions, I'm happy to.
I would suggest that we stop at this point, just because that is about the only thing that I've heard questions about, in case we run out of time. Rick?
Yeah, thanks, Dan, for coming. I was interested because, you know, I knew we were going to be seeing our urban growth boundary extends out that way to the high school and butts right up to the right-of-way, and trying to see where the 25 years went that we spent. But the concern I had was there's going to be a level of intensity there, I think, at some time in the future that it hasn't really been there. And there's going to be people that are going to try to access from both sides of South Side, and then the school district's talking about a fairly significant housing project up there. So I was reading the access control plan, because Southside Drive kind of ends at the edge of the railroad corridor, and then on the other side is school. And at some point, it'd have to be, I think, a publicly dedicated road that housing goes through. And then in Southside, when we looked at that the first time, Stotts Mill, there was a request for a maintenance facility for trail system to be constructed on the trail corridor. There's parking lot out there that's going to be pretty well overused in another summer or two. So I just wanted to, we're in the middle of, I think, having discussions about updating the master plan, and we're trying to contain whatever development comes along in that urban growth boundary. And so I had some concerns about really being able to define that and meeting your conditions for even just pedestrian and bicycle access, because I know you've mentioned in a couple places where taking people off the trail to go to an area like Rock Bottom or wherever it might be, Hook Spur, whether they're equestrians, was starting to, impact certain sections of the rail corridor. That was my main thing, and then as I was reading your report from January, I noticed all your housing's filled up. So I was gonna ask if you had any discussions with any of the jurisdictions yet about trying to figure that out.
We're actually, as far as the housing goes, we're actually participating in the Valley-wide Regional Housing Seminar. We're trying to get involved with USDA and look at alternatives for housing for us. So we are trying to be involved with the jurisdictions on this. And
Well, USDA, do you sort of fit into that rural category?
not for housing, for facility, so, but our employees would qualify for USDA, and so they have commercial things that we can look at, and some of the housing facilities fall in those commercial designations for us.
So combination park and ride.
Yeah, so
Housing.
we're actually, at some point, when this Valley-wide study that they're doing comes to a conclusion, gonna invite some of those folks in actually to
Yeah.
meet with
What-
our directors, which we haven't actually discussed with Dan yet, so we're letting.
Do you have a projection of what you may need, just off the cuff?
No, but Mike Herms is actually working on a facilities assessment process right now to kind of look at what we have and then ultimately what we might need over the next 20 or 25 years.
Okay. And then the other thing I noticed in here was an extension of the property tax mill levy till 2019 and things like that, and you probably saw the paper with the article about tax increases. So I'm just trying to get a handle on, it's been a while since we chatted, and
Sure.
I think the last time was Velociraft year and a half or so ago. So I think we're just trying to update a lot of things and get caught up on what's coming down the pipeline.
Well, I think that as it relates to the access control plan and any of your community plans, RAFTA will want to work with you cooperatively to do what's best for all concerned. But if there's a way, if somebody's requesting a bunch of crossings kind of in a short proximity, we might want to look to see if there's an alternative, to have a frontage road or something so that we can consolidate those accesses, particularly if they're new crossings that are being proposed.
That was my concern out that way, was that you either have bandit crossings or you have, like we have in the upper end, there's all kinds of little trails that come out of nowhere.
But pedestrian trails?
Yeah, and people walk their bikes up from
Yeah.
Woody Creek or Lower River or wherever they happen to be, and I think the point was down there at Rock Bottom that you have this intersection issue all of a sudden, and out here, it's pretty busy out there,
It is,
That may be one of the busier
We're at
trailhead
about
locations.
75,000 annual users on the Rio at the moment, so it's busy everywhere. We have counters in about 10 different locations right now, so we know, we can see the growth out there. It's impressive.
and excuse me.
No, go ahead.
And I think that's the concern that the board has, is that there may at some point need to be some limit on how, formal access is to the corridor. Just because if there are too many, it can degrade the overall user experience on the main Rio Grande Trail itself. We're going to be going through a recreational trail planning process, because the access control plan is just one component of the overall comprehensive plan, which we're supposed to update every 5 years. And so that's the next thing that we'll be working on, and we'll be probably trying to get some direction from the board as to what the criteria will be for approving these requests for trail accesses. And maybe some distance apart that they happen. The concern about Rock Bottom Ranch when this came up last summer was that sprung on us. They had got a grant and they had a timing issue and they were already under construction. And the board was just concerned that you might have some slow-moving families with kids accessing the trail, and that's a pretty long stretch of open trail that people ride pretty rapidly on, and they didn't want somebody to get hurt. So we worked with Rock Bottom Ranch to find a way make sure that people got onto the trail, not just directly, but they've kind of got to go through a kind of a serpentine fence or something to get out there. And good sightlines, that's another issue. So it's one of those things where on one hand, we don't want to make it difficult for people to use the trail and to enjoy it, but on the other hand, we don't want to make it so easy to access that it kind of spoils it for everybody. So whenever you manage anything, you're going to have some rules and regulations, and we haven't, as it relates to trail accesses, we haven't really developed the policy to determine how we're going to approve those going forward. Right now, it's kind of on a case-by-case basis.
That was, why I kind of reached out and asked to have a conversation, so I wanted to make sure we were moving at the same pace. 'Cause
Well-
I know the Glenwood Carbondale stuff's a lot bigger deal than what I'm talking about maybe, but,
Well, and one of the nice things about that particular intersection, which, as you said, ends right at the railroad corridor and then is private for the school on the other side, is that's actually a good location for an at-grade crossing. What you're looking for is the sight lines, that sight distance, so that you can build a safe at-grade crossing and have enough queuing distance on both sides for cars. So each intersection is going to be handled differently, but the one thing we want to do is not allow them to be right one on top of each other, so that at some point in the future, we could actually use it for something
and
else.
there's a good opportunity to improve the parking lot out there at the school that could be utilized in the summer that's not used. I mean, there's just a bunch of stuff that.
And I've seen some of the plans for the I think it's a water station and a barn for storing the cross-country ski equipment for, I think with Picken County in that area, and
We're kicking off with our post committee and the Picken County group. We're going to kick off a little planning effort for the amenities right there at that intersection.
But there will not be a barn for the snow grooming equipment. That's already been taken care of.
we have a big barn we can let you use if you'd like.
We already got one. Thanks. We know the barn you want.
I know.
Have you been in it lately?
I have. Yeah, it's time to go in there and clean it out again, so I'll eventually take it down.
Do we want Dan to hit a couple more minutes here before our regular meeting on any of the rest?
The transportation.
Well, it's up to you guys. I mean, to me, I'd love to hear the biggest issues to RAFTA for Basalt. I mean, you don't have that much time, but
Well, about 5 minutes?
At least.
At this point. Just to cap this off, again, back when the corridor was purchased, there was a lot of understanding about what was going on with the corridor and the rules and regulations. And then we were supposed to update this access control plan every 5 years, and it's been 10 years. And so there's been a lot of turnover on the boards and staffs and so forth. So we're bringing everybody back up to speed, and then we hope to do it every 5 years in the future, so we won't kind of hit these bumpy waters like we did this time around. The main thing is, though, that we're trying to protect ourselves from some claim that we've severed the corridor by virtue of approving a lot of crossings and improvements that we don't have a plan to restore and repair in the future. And it's a fine balance, it's not a bright line, and that's the purpose of the access control plan. But we're really willing to work with everybody to try to help them achieve their goals to the extent that we're able to do so and still preserve the corridor, because it's a probably $30, $40, $50 million asset that is important to everybody. Next slide, please. These can go pretty fast. Next slide, please. We do have a strategic plan. It's a 5-year plan, but we update it every year, and we have a list of our goals. These are major organizational goals, but if you were to look through the document that we provided that looks a lot like this, you'll see that each department has its own set of goals, and so there's literally hundreds and hundreds of goals in this plan. And I won't get into those, but if you have any questions about it, go ahead.
Dan, on that list, you've got acquiring property in Glenwood for expansion. We've had some feedback from our Basalt residents that the El Jabel one is such a success that it's inadequate now. Are there any plans or even an opportunity to expand that park and ride?
Well, I believe there is, and Angela attended a meeting today. She could kind of update you there.
So originally, when we built that park and ride, it was designed for 125 spaces. And because we were going to push the CDOT 20% threshold for adding traffic to that intersection, we actually had to change the design of that park and ride, or lower it 42 spaces, create some right-of-way for a new intersection at Elgibel on the backside of the lot. And the understanding was when the intersection was repaired, had Crown Mountain passed, Rec District passed, it would have been repaired at that time, that one side of our Park and Ride Road would go away, the Elgibel, is it Elgibel Road right there in
Soper's
front?
Village.
Yes, it's part of Soper's Village
Yeah,
connecting in.
and then the intersection would move in behind the parking ride, and we would actually be able to expand our lot to get our spaces back into that space between us.
And the community center.
Yeah.
So that we would build
So-
another lot there.
Apparently, that project is kind of, not that particular project, but a new development is being proposed at JW Drive. And so they're being asked to look at repairs to the main Elgibel intersection. And we just met with them today. So it looks like that project may be picking back up, and it may be possible for us to start thinking about additional parking. Because I myself went for the meeting today, and there was not one spot in the park and ride for us to park in.
Although there is overflow at the community center.
Yes.
People are willing to go over there and park and walk, maybe
Yeah.
3 to 5
But
minutes.
we're always looking for a partnership on the Willits Garage, so just kind of keep that in mind.
On the what?
A
Willits Garage.
partnership on the Willits Garage.
Oh.
So we would
Yeah.
like to pick up that discussion as a way of increasing capacity, because the town had concerns on the improvements to the Elgibel intersection, the one that was planned. The town had some concerns about that
Sure.
intersection, so.
That's another option, is that we can get some spaces in there. Next slide, please. And the next one after that. We are embarking upon a multi-year planning process. We're calling it our Integrated Transportation System Plan. And the goal of that is to kind of assess what RAFTA's needs are currently to do what we're doing, and then also to see if we can forecast what growth might be and what our needs are going to be in the future, and ultimately have the RAFTA board determine kind of the direction that we're going as an organization. We can try to preserve the status quo, we can live within our resources, optimize things, we can grow incrementally, or we can plan for some next big thing, which might be like BRT service in the I-70 corridor. There are some things that could happen as it relates to the entrance to Aspen, although the Upper Valley will have to kind of play the major role in determining what those changes might be as far as technology is concerned, and probably be largely responsible for the cost of any new system that would come into play there. We're getting to a point in Aspen where the number of buses on a daily basis going into and out of town is kind of reached that unacceptable level for anybody that lives next to a bus route. And buses have served the community well there for about 40 years, but is that what the community wants for the next 40 or the next 50? So it's time to be thinking about what that next thing is going to be, and those conversations are going to be getting underway. So there's going to be really a lot of information that we'll be gathering, forecasts in terms of population, employment, development, traffic, and those kinds of things that will help us in our outreach to the communities to kind of discuss where does RAFTA go, what are your needs as a community for transportation? In the Basalt area, would it be like a local circulator or something along those lines? I'm sorry, Jackie.
I just wanted to let you know we only have a couple minutes.
Okay, so that's the Integrated Transportation System Plan, and if you want to go to the next slide. What we've done, this is just a kind of a very simplistic forecast. We've grown over the last 20 years, as far as ridership is concerned, at about 1.7%, which over 20 years is a 40% growth in ridership. And so if we start taking some of those statistics and say, well, if we had a 10% ridership by 2024, 10 years out, what would that look like? And then what would that mean in terms of full-time employee equivalents, buses, office spaces, park and ride spaces, and so forth? If we grew at a rate greater than that, what would that mean? And all of those have really significant implications in terms of capital investment and operating costs and so forth. Next slide, please. We've had some major growth spurts at RAFTA over the years, and we've just been through one with BRT, which was really significant. So the board right now is kind of grappling with whether we should be planning for the major service expansions or to grow more gradually, kind of optimize what we have or enhance what we have, grow incrementally, or should we scale back and just kind of live within the resources we have? Next slide, please. A couple of, I'm not going to get into this, but we're capped out as far as sales tax is concerned in 2 of our jurisdictions, which will make it tough to go to a region-wide sales tax election in the future. That's why we're looking at the mill levy. RTAs are authorized to go up to 5 mills. That would, 1 mill would generate $3 million throughout the region. 2.5 of that would be in Pickens County. And so that's just something that we're looking at. We're not planning on going to the ballot this year, doesn't look like, but we might be doing it in 2017 or 2018 or some year beyond that. Next slide, please. We have a bunch of bus replacements, about 80 buses over 10 or 12 years that we have to replace, and the total estimate of what that might cost is somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 million. Next slide. If we kind of go status quo by doing lease purchase agreements, maybe issuing bonds, getting grants up to 50% of the cost of the buses, we hit a point out there in 2025 where things are really declining and we're getting below our operating debt service reserves. And so we know that we're probably going to need to do something, and that something can be a number of things, which is scale back, or it can be to try to get more resources. Next slide. This slide shows that if we were to pass a 1 mil property tax region-wide and continue to get about 50% of the cost of buses from grants, that we could pay off debt and we could actually kind of pay for buses as we go into the future. And our financial sustainability long-term would be much, much better if we could just kind of shore ourselves up with something like a 1 mil property tax or maybe $1.5 million. Any questions? That's,
It doesn't say the end.
well, next slide. How's that?
And it's pretty.
Just real quick, we're located down in Carbondale now, and the increase in traffic coming on 133, that parking lot was open for about 24 hours before it was completely full.
Is that after it was expanded, you mean?
Yeah, after it was expanded. I mean, literally people parking in the, next to the last parking spot, so that's just indicative of to me, of where the people are coming from that work here, and further and further away, and most of them were probably having to drive through Carbondale to some other location, maybe here, but it filled up immediately in a day.
Yeah, if you build it, they will come. And that's one of the challenges we face. The more successful we are in terms of building ridership, the more resources we need to be able to pay for everything.
Well, and how are we gonna, the biggest driver of this is parking in Aspen, driving to Aspen and stuff like that, and you see in the paper that they're gonna raise parking rates and all that stuff, and if they do and it does the intended consequence of getting more people on the bus, I mean, is there a conversation with the city on using potentially extra funds to help fund, bigger park and rides or more buses or replacement of buses and all that stuff?
I think that conversation is going to be happening. We got some inquiries when the article was in the paper about making the service free as a way to get more people to use transit. We said, well, wait a second, we're kind of at our max right now during peak season, peak periods, and we have lots of capacity during the middle of the day and later in the evening, but those peak times were kind of crunched, as you know, because you've ridden as a standee on many of those buses. So we said before we do something like that, we really need to analyze things and sit down and talk about it. A more efficient way to address that problem might be to intercept people at Brush Creek and at Buttermilk, where there's probably close to 900 to 1,000 paved spaces, and then run high-speed shuttles in there. But in order for that to work, they would have to raise parking fees and maybe make an auto-free zone in the downtown or eliminate some parking to give people an incentive to park at Brush Creek and then hop on the bus there. That would be a lot more efficient for us to move people from Brush Creek than from Basalt. And if for example, they raised parking, they were talking about making it free from Basalt. Well, I said, well, I don't think Basalt wants to become the parking lot for the region. So, we need to involve other people in this discussion, and we will.
Well, and that's the second piece was, trying to get people to drive all the way to Brush Creek from Glenwood is not really saving, resources or anything. It's just, there's got to be a full valley-wide discussion on, just trying to incentivize more ridership, but then more ridership comes with more costs and buses and you name it. So, I think we need to really discuss it because the city's going to maybe implement that this summer, and who knows what it's going to do for the ridership. And Buttermilk as parking doesn't solve anything because the traffic is horrible, and your buses get stuck because people are trying to cut
Trying
through
to
the
get into the
airport,
right lane.
and so I see it every morning, and so that doesn't really solve an issue either.
And when the city of Aspen is starting to say, we don't think we want any more buses coming through town, because somebody asked at the last meeting and they said 900 a day or something like that. It's
In and
like,
out.
do you
We just need
really?
the discussion.
Yeah, I mean, that's why RAFT has been talking for a while about, do we really try to ramp up more service when Aspen won't let us come into town, or what are we gonna do? Anyway,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Sorry to run late.
We were asking questions. Thanks, guys. Okay. Are you- Yeah, we'll get our students in. Okay. They're all here.
Well, she was doing the BRT, she probably was
Just
stressed
gonna
out.
stay there, and I think we're gonna have the kids come around between us or something. Yeah, the kids are
One
gonna
hand,
come around the back.
so you think we're gonna see,
Susan's scared of
think we're gonna see
somebody
some
knocking
kind of
on her.
warehouse system?
Well, oh, please, you're scared for the model. I have to try. Nice try. And the kids. Yeah, and the kids. Oh, I remember her. That's CO.
Hershey.
It's pretty Hershey.
I kept her, because I met her. Oh, we're gonna stand over here, my.
I know, that's why I was waiting.
We are ready to go.
Gotcha, thank you very much. Okay,
Roll call first, or?
I was gonna call the meeting to order first. That's what I usually do first.
That's perfect.
At 6:15, and yes, Pam, could we get a roll call, please?
Certainly. Mark Kittle,
Here.
Jackie Whitsitt,
Here.
Bernie Grauer,
Here.
Rob Levitt,
Here.
Gary Tenenbaum,
Here.
Rick Stevens.
Here.
Herschel Ross.
Here.
Everyone's present.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. There's so very many of you. It's very exciting. So we are going to do the thing that we love the best, which is acknowledging citizens in the community. And tonight, we are pleased to acknowledge the Student Citizens of the Month from the Basalt Public Schools. The awards are based on the 6 pillars of character. And the pillar of character tonight is caring. You people are so quiet. And caring is being kind, compassionate, and showing you care, expressing gratitude, forgiving others, helping people in need. At the end of this, the people who do get these awards, you get to actually go out in the hallway and you will collect a swimming pool pass for the summer too. So if you don't know how to swim, you can learn this summer. So I'm going to pass these recognitions out so all the counselors can award somebody. But what I need to ask you to do, because we have got this little project right here, is normally you would come through here, but if you could come around behind with us, we will, what is this? This is confusing me. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and make my award first because I met this girl at an award program at the high school for the Teacher of the Year. It was a surprise party that I think you organized, right, Cio? Yeah. Okay. And it's Cio Vasquez, correct? Okay, so if you can, want to come all the way around, that would be great. Okay, so Cio is a student with a huge heart for helping others. Her work on our school accountability committee, leadership in student clubs like the Gay Straight Alliance, and her work as a teacher intern, Cio is enthusiastic, articulate, and above all, compassionate. At the beginning of the year, she spoke with great passion about her interest in being an early childhood educator. We know that whatever career path she chooses, she will have made a big difference in the people's lives. It's a little crowded back here. Okay, so, by the way, Cio's name is spelled S-T-I-X-I-O.
Well, it's wrong on there.
Anyway, but it's close.
XIO.
Oh, but anyway, it's hard. It doesn't sound like Cio, so, thank you. Okay, Herschel, do you want to
Want
pick
to
your
go
award?
first? Okay, is Cole Dombrowski tonight?
Cole.
Stand here with me. The award is based on caring, and that's about as nice a thing as you can be cited for. This is a certificate of achievement, and your teachers who nominated you for this said that Cole is a caring and hardworking student. He is always fair with his classmates and friends. Cole's teachers enjoy having his attentive and positive energy each day in their classes. Not only is Cole respectful and fair to others, he is a dedicated and caring student.
Bernie, do you want to go next?
Sure. Okay, this certifies that Roman Santiago is awarded this certificate. Roman is in the 11th grade. Roman has hit his stride in English and American history this semester. In his recent work on a Huckleberry Finn assessment, he went above and beyond expectations and wrote 6 pages on the significance of various scenes. His work in history has shown equal enthusiasm and tenacity. Last week, he helped prospective 9th graders when we visited the middle school. He is a warm and welcoming student who is really thriving in school right now. Good work.
Ramon, right?
Gary?
Is Jacqueline Northrup here?
She missed us last.
She missed us. She's actually getting caring and fairness. I'm giving her both.
Oh, good.
She missed us last time, so we didn't want you to be left out. You can come up.
Can I get your picture?
Hi, how are you? Jacqueline is a silent leader. Her actions contribute to a positive atmosphere in the classroom. She shows respect for the opinions of her peers and takes time to think before acting. She has a great ability to listen and not rush to make decisions, which gives her the ability to perform high quality and well thought out work. Jacqueline solves conflicts in an appropriate manner using dialogue as the first tool. She works through challenges with perseverance and enthusiasm. I'm very proud of Jacqueline and all that she has accomplished in first grade.
Yay! It's okay. It's kind of hard. She's.
Rick, do you have one?
I do, thank you. There's an interesting connection here with what's going on in the rest of the world too, with a few different things, and I just wanted to read something that comes out of the Search Institute that has been driving some things in the early childhood education. It's about expressing care, and it says, "Be present, pay attention when you are with me." This is from the point of view of a child to an adult. "Be warm, let me know that you like being with me and express positive feelings towards me. Invest your time and energy. Show interest and be dependable. Show that you like me and want the best for me." That's what families are looking at when they have problems. That's just one out of 5 things. And we actually took this to the Aspen Valley Ski Club, so if you have any people out there that are skiing with any of those coaches, I hope that they're taking good care of you on the hill. Vilma Cabrero Trejo, 7th grade, is she here? Vilma is open and friendly to all people. She has also earned the respect of classmates and teachers by treating others in a kind and caring way. Vilma is a great student and athlete and contributes to the overall positive climate at Basalt Middle School. She is an outstanding young adult and always thinks of others. Thank you.
Congratulations. Okay, who's got one?
My turn. Lucy Fallhaber. Hi, Lucy. Lucy is a great example of a caring child. She is always kind to everyone she meets. Whether it is on the playground or in the classroom, she shows she cares about her classmates. If Lucy sees someone who looks like they need someone to play with, she will ask them if they want to play. When we got a new student in our class, she made sure that she felt like she was a part of our class. Lucy helped her with our classroom routine, helped her in the cafeteria, and just made the transition to a new school a little easier. She's happy to help other students in any way she can. When we pick our jobs every week, she is excited for whoever gets the job. She's happy to share anything she has with her classmates. Lucy walks in the door with a smile and a hug and puts a smile on my face. That sounds pretty good.
Do we have one left?
Everyone left. Sebastian Thibault. This was written by Sebastian's teacher, who said, "We chose Sebastian Thibault from my class because Sebastian has been such a helpful student to all of my kiddos this year, including my special needs student. He always says thank you and shows that he cares with his words."
Is that it? Oh, no, we have a secret one.
We have one more.
Yes. We have a special proclamation tonight for an adult, and I think that Erica and Kristen would like to come up and introduce this one. Is that correct?
Or no?
I see Erica. Can you make your way through the crowd?
I was expecting you to do this.
I know, I thought you were going to read it.
I'm going to read it. You were just going to make a little
You don't want us in
preliminary.
there? Do you want us?
Come on up.
You're fine right
You can stay
here.
right where you're at.
You're fine right
Yeah, do you want me to read this first and then you make a, okay, all right. This proclamation honoring community service in the town of Basalt. Whereas the town of Basalt acknowledges that the performance of government and other social institutions is powerfully influenced by citizen engagement in community affairs and
And whereas individual citizens and citizens networks working for the common good of the community are part of the special character of the town of Basalt, and
whereas Tori Thompson represents this month's pillar of character, caring by being an exemplary parent and kind-hearted employee in the school district. Tori has long been a substitute teacher at our schools and recently landed full-time at Basalt Elementary at her new position of student management secretary. That's got to be hilarious. At the front desk of Basalt Elementary, her tender and patient heart helps guide young students and inquisitive parents. Her welcoming and patient smile are the perfect combination for the face of Basalt Elementary.
As a parent, her sincere and constant involvement in all three Basalt schools, whether through academic, sports, or the arts, is noticeably caring. Tori appears at so many events, people wonder if she has a stunt double. She offers only words of encouragement to students, parents, and colleagues.
Tori has served on Basalt Education Foundation's Board of Directors for well over a decade. She has been a caring advocate for teacher funding and considerate liaison for the sponsors and donors. Recently, she headed up a project to personally thank all the sponsors of the Taste of Basalt with handmade art and cards from Basalt students, even after she had stepped off the board. A selfless and generous gift of her time to help other BAF volunteers. Tori's caring nature touches all those in our Basalt community. She leads with strong and meaningful values. Her passion for the care of children in our community rings loud and clear, a pillar of caring indeed. And so, someone want to finish it off?
Go ahead.
No. Therefore, we, the Basalt Town Council, proclaim that on this 23rd day of February, 2016, the town of Basalt is a far, far better place by the role model and deeds of Tori Thompson.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome.
I don't know. I think they made me sound better than
It's a little.
Oh, thanks, you guys.
That must be your favorite kid.
Very sweet.
It's gold.
Did you want to
Thank
say
you all.
anything at all?
No, the only thing I really have to say is that I feel like there are so many people that are so much more deserving of this that I said, I go, I think I'm getting punked tonight. Like, I'm going to walk in there and be like, oh, that's funny, you know. So, no, I appreciate it. Thank you. And I know that there are many people that do twice as much as I do. So, thank you very much.
awards portion of our movie, and so I'm sure most everybody will be leaving. If you want to go out in the hallway, there'll be photos taken of award winners and other people who are photo bombing. So go on ahead out there and you can get your prize.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
nice to see you again. The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. Are there questions on that, or does somebody want to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I made some very slight changes to it, so you might say as amended.
Do you want to tell us what they were, or did you just talk to Ann?
I still think,
Okay.
it was just a couple of words.
As amended by Councilman Ross.
Thank you. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great. Council comments, reports, disclosures, and town manager report. Anybody?
I have a comment.
Yes, sir.
We've got a report from CORE this week showing where their money went, broken down by county. And so Eagle County got almost $100,000. 22 homes were assessed. 17 homes got rebates, 13 homes got cash back. Businesses, Randy Udall grant for $25,000 to RMI. And that's just the $100,000 that CORE spent in Eagle County. They spent almost $600,000 in Pitkin County, and some of that's in Basalt as well. So it's a pretty good return on the investment that we made for CORE.
Great. Thanks, Rob. Anybody else? Yes, Gary?
I just want to thank Greg. I see him sitting back there. You guys really helped on that mutual aid assist of the car going up the frying pan. I think you were the one up there with them. So I really, we're a small little town with a small little police department that does a lot of big things. So I really, whenever you guys deserve credit, and I really wanted to give the credit to where it's due. So thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Gary. Anybody else? Before the manager's report, in the excitement with all the people in the room, I kind of forgot to say that we did amend our agenda in a slight way. We have removed items 7B, 7C, and 7D from the agenda. And we also want to thank Grassroots TV for being here and for broadcasting our meetings live and also for rebroadcasting them. And tonight's videographer is Andrew, and he's taking great care of us, paying attention when we need to turn the volume off and things like that. Thank you, Andrew. And the last thing is the mayor's coffee is tomorrow morning at Saxy's. It's always 8 o'clock following the day of a regular meeting, so feel free to join me. New people even would be great. And I know we have a town manager report. Oh, I'm sorry, Bernie, I thought you left.
No, just.
Okay.
Yeah, I've heard some comments from some possible stakeholders or wannabe stakeholders in the Roaring Fork Classic that they felt that the process wasn't that clear and straightforward and that some of the original policies did not seem to be followed. So I felt these were reasonable concerns, and I said I would ask for a work session after the election to discuss these issues and come to more uniform policy and let public comment be heard.
Thanks, Bernie. Mr. Scanlon.
So I've added town manager's report to this. I'm going to keep it really brief tonight. It'll be about 1 minute to 2 minutes. I've changed the weekly updates. So go out there tomorrow and you're going to see that I've created departmentals that are also weekly, and they'll be able to post their reports both to the website and email them to me. That way people can look up a particular department without having to scroll through 20 pages to get to maybe a question or concern that they have. Tonight, I'm saving my report for Lewis because Lewis has a lot of the things that are fast breaking in terms of issues and concerns, with the most important thing to remind council is that on March 1st, there's a joint meeting of the Pitkin Open Space and Trails with the Board of County Commissioners, which I think will, Open Space and Trail has recommended $400,000, and we'll also be talking about, additional funds or support that Pitkin County can offer to the Basalt Avenue underpass. With them coming back to a joint meeting on March 22nd, the Board of County Commissioners of Pitkin, and we will have our bids by then.
What time was it?
Right now, it's sometime between 10 and 5 on the 1st, but I don't know exactly what time the joint.
And you can let us know, I bet.
Yes.
Because I've asked this a couple times myself. Okay, Louis, would you like to come up and talk to us? By the way, I have made a note that I thought your written report was really good. You get an A from the mayor, if that matters.
I have to thank Pam for reminding me to.
Okay.
Good evening. From Kids Awards to civil engineering, so you cover it all. I thought I would start with a quick update on the Basalt Avenue underpass. As you know, we spent much of late in the year in January and going through a value engineering process to find cost-saving measures. We did that. In February, early February, we submitted the plan set and the contract documents to CDOT and RAFTA for review. They reviewed them and said this is fine to go forward with. Because it is a local agency project, we had to get their concurrence. So we are in the bid process now. We advertised the project on February 18th. We are scheduled to have a bid opening on March 11th. We are having a pre-bid meeting on March 1st. We're about halfway through the bid period, and we actually have good interest this time. We have had 15 general contractors pick up plan sets, which is a very good sign. A lot more interest than we had a year ago. Through the value engineering process, our latest engineer's estimate is around $6.6 million. Of course, a lot of that will be based on market forces, which are difficult for us to project, but that's the status of the Basalt underpass. Any questions?
Anybody? Questions from us? Yeah, I guess we'll all just hang on until we get to.
Yes. A few other things. The letter of map revision is making its way through the long process through the CWCB and FEMA. In January, I reported that they did a completeness review of the application. They had 7 items, 5 of which were technical items, and all of those 5 technical items have been taken care of. So there are 2 public notice requirements that CDOT would like to work with the town of Basalt on that we need to kick off. So we'll work with town staff to make sure that's done. We have been working with town staff to anticipating a lot of applications because of the new floodplain mapping to update your ordinance that covers floodplain issues and floodplain applications that you will see. We will probably be recommending that the town adopt the CWCB model floodplain ordinance, which we reviewed and compared with your present ordinance, and they really have the same information in both of them. The state model ordinance is very user-friendly and very, it's well-known by the people that use it. So we'd like to work with town staff to adopt the CWCB model ordinance, but pull over the specific items that are specific to the town of Basalt. So we'll be working with town staff on that. A few other things. We've been working with Susan and your planning staff on a South Side traffic study. I think that's in Susan's hands now. We've been working with RAFTA and a host of other folks on the Myers Access Road. to make sure that all the design, permitting, utility coordination issues are all done. We believe it is done, and now it's in RAFTA's hands to go through their bidding procurement process. We've been working with the Public Works Department on West Cypress Drive rebuild project, which will be rebuilding the road and doing some drainage improvements. So that's about it.
On the cost for the underpass, there's several down below here that there's no money set aside for. Erosion control, landscaping, utility relocations, field engineering and inspection. Is there an estimate on that? That seems like pretty good, significant charges there.
Some of it got pushed to Basalt into the landscaping and stuff like that did.
Mark, I don't know what the answer to that is, but I can find out. We did some of the cost-saving measures. We did reduce some of the landscaping. We changed the waterproofing on the exterior of the concrete, and we changed the method that the external rock will be placed on the portions of the wall that you'll see. Those were the significant value engineering items that we did, but I don't know why those don't have a number on them.
Okay, I was just curious.
Anybody else?
I will have a number.
Questions for Louis?
There is, however, there is a bid item that allows certain changes, additions to be made that we always add to a project of this size.
For contingencies.
Yes.
Thanks, Louis.
Thank you.
Good job. Okay, our next item is citizen comments for items that are not on the agenda. Are there people in the audience who would like to make a comment? If you would like to just state your name.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Riffle. And separate from Resolution 9, I'm curious as far as why is there no progress on mention of the town of Basalt purchasing the CDC parcel? And I invite that to come up and be considered. It seems that separate from Resolution 9 and petitioner's proposal, the petitioners were deemed as being, not having, excuse me, a legally binding petition, but therefore it's still something that's out there, and it's generally alluded to in Resolution 9, but I just want to bring it up as separately. It would be nice in conjunction if there were some sort of movement, and I invite you all to consider some sort of movement towards the prospect of the town purchasing the CDC parcel for our best interest. So into the future, we can be land rich.
Thank you.
Yes.
Others? Any other comments for items that are not on the agenda? Sharon, your mouth was open, then it closed again. All right. Okey doke. Was that your? No, I'm good. All right. Okay, if there's no more citizen comments, the actual first action item on our agenda is.
Robin
I was just gonna ask.
Robin's here.
Oh,
Robin
okay.
Tolan here's from
You
Youth
forgot
Zone.
to jump up and come. Yeah, I know, that's a little
everybody.
confusing because it says not on the agenda, and then there you are. So,
Right,
sorry.
Anyway, well, good evening, everybody. I'm Robin Tolan, I'm from Youth Zone, and I'm the development director, and I'm here to thank you for all your support and kind of give you a quick update on what's happening with kids in the valley. Because of your support, we're able to leverage every municipality from Aspen to Parachute, so it's huge that you guys give us such big support. And we're 40 years old this year, which is quite amazing, and as you well know, almost every kid that goes to through the juvenile justice system ends up coming to Youth Zone, and we have a 90% success rate for those kids not to repeat another offense. And our cost per kid is about $1,400 per kid for 6 months. And if that same kid would stay in the system, the cost to taxpayers would be about $24,000 for 6 months. So we get about 85% of all kids that go to court, we end up coming to youth zone. That number is increased, as well as the number of referrals directly coming from high school, directly from law enforcement. We're doing more restorative justice cases where law enforcement or the schools are calling us directly without having the kids get a ticket. So yeah, it's pretty exciting that we're 40 years old and couldn't do it without community support. So thank you so much. And any questions for me?
I can just throw out that I was lucky enough to be a contestant to Kiss a Pig one year for when it was not even called Youth Zone yet. And just to see what this organization is able to do by keeping kids out of the system and on a completely different road, like a positive road, is still amazing to me. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, I believe there's a report there that got stuck in front of Mark.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have some here too.
Yeah, I got them, but
We were trying to pass them around, but.
thank you very much for coming.
Thanks.
Right.
Rick,
I'm sorry,
you-
go ahead, Rick.
There's a young man in Glenwood named Altai Chillin. He's with Berthod Motors. His name's Altai.
Altai, yeah, I know Altai, yeah.
And you've seen his initiative on creating a new high school from, I think it's Yampa or Bridges, taking it in another direction, because a lot of the children or young adults you deal with are in those other high schools that aren't, your traditional public school.
Yeah,
So he's really taken off on that stuff. And he's,
yeah. We
Favorite
definitely
career.
are in conversation with them.
Yeah.
We do a lot of collaboration, so.
Yeah, and then the other thing is Lori, we do have the mask you live in, so when.
Yeah,
we were
I know
talking
you've
about
been
doing-
talking to Lori about
Yeah.
that.
So that's another opportunity to
Great.
maybe match some money.
Prevention,
Yeah, but, we'll be in touch.
sounds good.
Others?
Thank you.
Going. Thanks, Robin.
All right,
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is 7A, public hearing and second reading of ordinance 6, 2016, an ordinance of the town granting special review approval, a condominium amendment and historic incentives for the conversion of Unit 202 into a residential unit at 104 Midland Avenue, the Little Snell Building. James? Hi.
This is second reading of an ordinance that would approve of a conversion of Unit 202 in the Little Snell Building from an office to a one-bedroom residential unit that would be about.
Is this Robert?
This is
Robin.
Robin Perry.
Oh, Robin.
My wife's in Denver.
Okay,
Couldn't
got
get
it.
her.
Okay.
It's kind of early for you, eh?
Kinda late.
So it's proposed as a 1,370 square foot residential unit. It's on the building that's right behind Saxy's across the street here from Town Hall. As background, as was described at first reading, the building contains a parking garage on the first floor, which is behind Saxy's. It contains office space and one-bedroom unit on the second floor, which was recently converted from an office space to the one-bedroom residential unit. And then there are two-bedroom units on the third floor of the building. The property is designated historic because Saxy's was a historic resource on the site. In reviewing the application, the staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission thought it met the proposed use goals consistent with providing more of a mass of people downtown to help support the downtown area. Parking was an issue that came up at the first council meeting, and the council wanted some more information, and several council members expressed concerns about the amount of parking for the two-bedroom units on the upper floor. Staff in evaluating the parking doesn't believe that the application will have a significant impact on the on-street parking in the area, as the two-bedroom units on the third floor will have one space in the garage regardless of whether this application is approved or not for the conversion. Additionally, the unit 202 that's proposed for the conversion will have one space allocated for its use in the garage. And then the staff and the P and Z are recommending that there be cash in lieu paid for the additional portion of a space that is required. Staff did do some calculations on what the parking requirements would be for the space as an office space versus the one-bedroom residential space. As an office space, it would have required 5.5 parking spaces. As the one-bedroom residential unit, it would require 1.5 spaces. And staff has also included a map that's in your packet showing that there is some 72-hour parking in the immediate vicinity on Midland Spur. So staff really doesn't think that this specific conversion will have much of an impact in terms of parking on the street. So staff this evening would recommend that you take any comments that the applicant group has this evening, provide any public comments because it is a public hearing, and then provide council discussion. Staff would also take any council questions you may have, and ultimately staff would recommend approval of the ordinance. We do have Robin here this evening as a landlord.
Did you have any additional comments about this application?
My wife has all the paperwork in Denver and couldn't get here.
Oh, of course.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I mean, this is enough information. This is second reading for us. I just thought you might want to say
Well,
something.
we've owned the thing for like, I believe 5-6 years now, and it was commercial, and we just haven't been able to do anything with it, so we're gonna really see if we can convert it and fix it up and get it sold or rent
Just
it.
being creative.
Trying to.
Okay. All right. If there's no more comments from the applicant, this is a public hearing. We'll open the public hearing at 6:50. Are there people in the public that would like to make a comment regarding this application? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing almost immediately. Go to council for, yes, sir.
James, if I understand it correctly, 5 spaces would be required for commercial?
If it were an office space, now there was a historic designation on the property, so there was a waiver of all the commercial office parking when it was originally approved. So there wouldn't be any requirements at all for commercial office parking on site. But if you were doing a code comparison of, how many spaces it would typically be required, it would be required
I was
5.5.
just curious why they had to pay the $3,000, and it's because they were waived originally.
Yeah, but the residential wasn't waived.
Okay, that's all I had.
Thanks, Mark. Rob?
Go quickly. James, 2 weeks ago, you said there was actually working on a plan for the parking. This isn't really a plan, it's just some math. And I'm in favor of the conversion, but, I think as parking becomes an issue, we need, instead of just fudging around with numbers, we actually need to come up with ways to park cars.
Yeah, and I think, kind of the response might be that we are taking in cash in lieu for the portion of a space that affects this unit. That can be applied to establishing additional parking spaces here in the future. For the portion of a space that's not actually on site for this unit.
Right, that just doesn't seem like it's evolved in the last 2 weeks, and I was sort of expecting some plan.
Got it.
Thanks, Rob. Anybody else? Questions, comments, motions, et cetera?
I move to approve ordinance number 6, series of 2016 on second
Oh,
reading.
Did you actually open the public hearing?
Yes. Did you sleep through it?
Oh, I did. I slept through it. Sorry.
Okay, you want to try that again? Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
I made the motion.
I'll make,
Okay. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks for coming in. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Okay, items 7B, 7C, 7D are pulled from this agenda and will be reappearing at some later date,
not even,
No,
or never.
no.
well, in a number of years.
All right,
You don't
long
need to
story,
even think
long
about it.
story, never mind.
There was a record keeping glitch that was uncovered by Susan today, and we don't need to act on this now.
Good.
Moving right along.
That's awesome, because it looks like a lot of agenda items. I know it wasn't, but, okay, our next item is 8A, it's resolution number 9, a resolution of the town of Basalt providing direction to the P&Z Low and the Roaring Fork Community Development Corporation. Susan. Okay, the purpose of this resolution 9 is to give direction to Lowe, who has the option contract on the CDC property, and to the CDC, and to the P&Z about what to include in the land use application. And what we are bringing to the group tonight is a new tool where we had a physical model prepared of the CDC property in Lions Park and Merino Park. And this really came out of Resolution 55, series of 2015, where the town council directed staff to work with Lowe in preparing a model of the property. I think you're going to find this is a useful tool for a check-in for the development that has been envisioned on the CDC property. And I thought what we would do first is kind of run you through some pictures of the model. And then we're going to take a quick break so that the audience and the town council can kind of go around the model, and this won't be on TV. Also for folks to look at the model, and then we'll regroup and have the more formal portion of the consideration. It's going to include Mike Scanlon kind of kicking off of where we are on the financial money piece, and we're going to have Dylan Johns talk about what the P&Z's vision is for moving forward on the zoning. So. Again, we had the model prepared, and James, if you could circle this particular drawing here showing the length of the model. The model actually is exactly the same scale, 1 to 30, as the council and the public's been very used to seeing on the map behind you here. So it is showing, the model is showing the 9 acres of park that the town currently owns, and then the 2.3 acres of the Community Development Corporation property. We're focusing on that property tonight because we're trying to give direction to Lowe and the CDC on what type of a land use application to bring in. But we're also bringing in a couple other pieces, as in Merino Park and Lions Park. And the beauty with the model is that it's like a jigsaw puzzle. So when we do more work on the Basalt Center Circle property, that we can kind of add that to the map, to the model that we have. So this is the overall length of the model. What you're looking at here in this model is a 55,000 square foot of building square feet on the CDC property. James, if you could go to the next one. And when we gather around the model, you'll see here's what the 55,000 square feet represent on the model. This is what we call on our, we also have a little chart up here. And this is kind of outlining our options here. And this is one we kind of called it P&Z and staff, but it's representing the 55,000 square feet. And our model is keeping kind of the fundamental decisions that the council has made to date on the planning for the property. So, you know, we start with the dock plan and the big V. So we have the big V kind of coming across here on the property. We have the building line, and remember, this is where all the buildings are to be pulled back from. And you know, just technically, this building's actually 10 feet pulled back from that building line. But this is that model. Then we also had another, we actually had 3 versions of the CDC property, and we're really just gonna focus on 2 of them. The next one, James, if you could show that. This piece of the model is aimed at showing the petitioner's version of what would happen under their plan if the town purchased the property and then allowed buildings. And the big difference is that there is 1.3 acres of park in this area. So the building footprint on this one, the total square footage is 43,560 square feet. And the other big difference is with the uses. So one is kind of the building mass and scale and where the buildings are located, and the other is the uses. So the first version that I showed you with the 55,000 square feet, that option is showing, is really based on 40,000 square feet of a condominium hotel and 15,000 square feet of office. And where did that come from? That came from some discussions that staff had with Jim DeFrancia on a program that Lowe could consider for the property. And then the 43,560 square feet, we'll call that the petitioner's option. That one is showing what they're viewing as community serving uses. So that included events, restaurant, incubator space, potentially some affordable housing. So those are the two options we're gonna kind of concentrate on when we come down and sit on the model, when we stand around the model. The other thing the model's gonna show is, the model's gonna show about a 14,500 square foot development on what we call Merino Park, where the recycling center is. This version shows it as a affordable housing, about 9 units. The P&Z also felt it would be great incubator space if it wasn't affordable housing. The model also will show you, I don't think we have a slide of that, it shows it shows on Lions Park. It shows Town Hall going away under the ultimate plan that the Town Hall's in the Big V. And the art base, formerly known as the Wiley, has an expansion on either side of the building for the art center. So that's what we're going to see for the model. Again, we're kind of focusing on the CDC property. We've, one, reflected the Big V, two, reflected the building line. We have the option that is included in the memo, which shows kind of the staff version of the 55,000 square feet. But we've also shown the massing of what would occur with the citizen petition. And I don't know that very many people from the citizen group are here, but they were at we had 2 work sessions with the P&Z, and they were at that meeting. And I think we had some really healthy discussions at the P&Z, and I think both groups kind of understood each other's position or take on how the property should be developed. So I don't know if Patrice is here, if you want to just correct me if I said anything inaccurate about how I was representing the citizen petition. Okay. So with that, I would just, we thought it might be good just to have a break, so people could kind of gather around the model for maybe like 3 minutes, and then we could kind of get back in our seat and actually consider the model. So does that work? Sure. And this one was one where we're inviting audience participants. Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So that is the other big difference.
She may be
between
interested,
the
she's the
two.
attorney for this.
This is representing the P&Z's idea with the massing, which is what we call a 2.5 story. The 2.5 story means that the third story is pulled back from the street. And then on the citizen petition model, it's showing two stories.
Where can I sit that I can see
And
it?
so that's a big difference now.
I don't know, there's a lot of trees on this side.
There's a lot of trees on this. And then we're gonna hear from Dylan. Mike Scanlon's gonna go over some of the financial pieces of this. And then Dylan Johns, the chair of the P and Z, is gonna give us some background about the P and Z's thoughts and direction, recommendation on the direction they think the zoning should take, so.
So I'll start, and right behind Tom, you'll see the Roaring Fork Community Development Corporation, and we've been calling them reimbursable expenses related to that parcel, meaning that the goal of the project at the beginning was not only a river restoration project, but the removal of some of the properties out of the floodplain so that they could be developed. And so we often hear the cost of the land, $3 million, and you often hear the reimbursement to the town of 2.5, and if you've ever wondered how that 2.5 is made up, it's right there. Plus I have a handout for those people that are interested in it. We've been using this for over a year. It's what Jim DeFrancia received when he came in and started talking to us. It's what we've contemplated as we went along. The resident relocation only represents half the cost of relocation, because understand half of the trailers were on the town's parcel, which is nearest the river. Then there's development costs that are specific to the site, and then there's the apportionment of the other costs related to the overall project that created the floodplain mitigation and the improvements to the river. There's a piece left, $200,000 for a letter of map revision. As Louis was talking about, we have an ongoing letter of map revision for Southside that we've submitted. This would be an additional letter of map revision. This would be the third letter of map revision that the town has sought in the last 2 years. The first being a portion of the Roaring Fork Conservancy piece in RMI. So we had to have a letter of map revision for them to construct RMI. And then we're working on the south side, and then this portion would be the third letter of map revision related to our work along the Roaring Fork River. I bring that up in that when we started this project, and if you go back to the fall of 2013, and as we were putting the bond issue together and we're thinking about the relocation of people and how we're going to do it, you know, the idea was that there was a $5 million bond issue. There was two pieces, $3 million general obligation, $2 million taxable, meaning that there was private development that would help reimburse the town for the cost of improvements related to making land that we at the time believed would be privately developed, we would be reimbursed for. You can't issue general debt because it benefits a private party. Since that time, this model sort of indicates the progression of the community. And so as you are thinking about this model, and as you're thinking forward, you know, one of the things that, and we heard again tonight, and I would kind of remind you, we had the resolution at the last meeting, number 4. Section 10 actually talks about, I'm supposed to come back to the council by July 12th, 2016, with a plan to put a measure on the ballots for the purchase of a portion or all of the CDC property. So the question about, is the town council considering it? Yes. It's the resolution that you passed at the last meeting. But at the same time, understand that there's this reimbursable piece that we have to know that we're not going to be able to get all of that back. So how do we finance that piece as well? So it's not just the acquisition of property you have to think about. It's also the reimbursement of some of these costs, especially if that portion is a park and there's nothing to be reimbursed, or no one to go get reimbursement from, because we'll be the owners of it. And understanding that this is a simultaneous equation. There's the, what are you going to grant in development? How much could that development yield in contributing to helping buy the park? How much do we need to satisfy, what do we need to do to satisfy and help our general fund? Because understand, there were general fund dollars that we put back that we thought we were going to get paid back. And we've already made one payment on the taxable debt using our park, open space, and trails money to do that. And there's not a reason to carry that taxable debt. It needs to be refinanced. So it's a set of equations you have to go through on the financial side, but this has to be decided so you can even, before you can even get to there. Because without knowing what level of development, you don't know what level to anticipate in terms of how to budget for the acquisition of a park. Are we getting a lot of reimbursement or a little reimbursement back? So tonight is really sort of the linchpin in starting that discussion, so Judy and I can start working on that as we do the 2016 budget, as we contemplate a bond issue or property tax increase that would be required in November, as we look at what grants might be available to reduce the amount of bonds or mill levy that we would need, but we can't really get started until we address this last piece.
Yes, sir.
And these numbers don't include any development of the park as a park or maintenance or any of those things?
No, this is just where we are today with our expenses
Mhm.
and anticipated reimbursements. And then going forward, the model indicates a park, which I would imagine is a public purchase, so you have to start accounting for that. If that's a public purchase, then a portion of these reimbursable dollars will not be coming back. So how do you fund those?
Can you,
Yes, sir.
can you explain that, what's in that 837, 751 Pan and Fork site development?
So it's everything that would be on the CDC site. So if you remember the original site and the elevation of the site, it's all of the fill to bring that site up, as well as all of the things that we really got rid of, all of the water lines, all the sanitary sewer line, you know.
Okay, that's
all the-
included in there?
Yeah,
Okay.
everything that you can think about.
Yeah, Rick.
Yeah, and that was an engineered fill that is quite a bit more complicated than just
Right.
dumping dirt in there. So understanding that there was going to be some development there, the site was prepared so that groundwater issues and structural issues for buildings would be a little bit mitigated.
And if you
Not
remember,
entirely, but,
a substantial drainage
right.
system that's on what I would call the Two Rivers roadside. If you remember, there was always sort of that channel that was always draining. So if you watch that, that was a significant piece, just moving the water through the site.
Others, or should we let Dylan go? You want to have a turn, Dylan?
My turn?
Yeah.
Okay. Dylan Johns for the record, and thank you all. I think given what's already been presented, if you have technical questions about what's going on in here, Susan's probably the expert on that. But as I see it, this is just another opportunity for me to relay to you some of the highlights of what Planning and Zoning has been discussing and key points that have been on our minds as we've kind of gone through these different exercises and looking at all of these parcels, because we understand that we're not, while the CDC parcel is the one that's up first, we are engaged in a town planning process, and we are trying to think about this in a way which tries to make sense of what a town needs to function, which is why one of the reasons why we felt the CSC zone would be a good one with the name community serving use within it. And so, and also to just point out, Resolution 9 is, as I'm reading it, is really, it's a guidance tool for you to give us with respect to how do we go about drafting specifics. Resolution 9.
Resolution 9, yeah,
Okay. So this is just giving us a better indication of where you want to see the specifics of the zoning get to and how do we get there. So to talk about a few points that I've heard the commission talk about a lot is understanding, first of all, the main difference in the resolution with option A and option B is whether or not we pursue a methodology of defining a volume, kind of scale, and architectural character for the buildings, which gets codified, and then a developer takes that and sort of sees what they can do with it, or do we cap a floor area ratio and kind of do the same thing, but with a specific floor area ratio cap to it?
Can I just stop you 1 second?
Sure.
I think we heard this phrase at the last meeting, and maybe I didn't get this, but this volumetric limitations, I understand architectural character, but I'm not getting this volumetric limitations versus developed square feet. What is
Sure.
the difference?
So let me try to explain that a little bit better, and the model I think was helpful for everyone. It's no matter what you do for a living, it's always nice to see things actually physically represented. What a volumetric limitation would say is that the setbacks around the property would be 0 or 5 feet or 10 feet or whatever. The building heights would be kept within a certain box that's obviously not really there. So number of floors would be established depending on where the property was. It could be determined by a building that's immediately across the street. For instance, if we get over to the Basalt BCC Center Circle, the buildings over there are notably higher than many of the other buildings in downtown. So there might be a possibility for a building there to grow higher. There might be an opportunity for a building to, if it's a certain distance away from the street entirely and doesn't face a street with not in a certain proximity to a street, that building might be higher as well. And so the model represents what a sort of 2.5-story configuration could look like. It's certainly not a final version of what that might look like, and depending on further discussions on how effectively what's shown accomplishes that, we may decide to say set back the upper floor by more so that you really get the impression that you have a 2-story facade along the street. And then you might also say there's a certain percentage of open space that's on the site, or you have divisions within the building facade which correspond to a pattern which you can find going up Midland Avenue as you get those sort of little alleyways, and some of them are bigger alleyways, but there's already a sort of framework of size and scale of buildings within the downtown. And so we were really looking at whether or not we could kind of work with those already defined pieces and say, here's how a building could form itself on the site. From our standpoint of trying to figure out how to maximize whatever the use for a building or any space on the site is, one of our concerns is that if we create a maximum floor area amount, we might run into a situation where a building can't have a double-loaded corridor because it needs an extra 5 feet of width overall to make it work. Like Susan explained, this model has a strip of what is, I guess, in the salmon color up there, which hasn't been developed. Was that 10 feet, 15 feet, did you say? That the model doesn't.
At the end here?
Yeah.
Side? Yeah, it's actually quite a bit more than that. It's about 40 feet on the CDC, the 55,000 square foot, it's about 40 feet, and on the petition, it was less than that. Oh, it was 100 feet, I'm sorry, it was 100 feet on the larger one and 40 on the petition.
Okay. So I think that one of the things that was very helpful for all of us to see was the comparison between the 55,000 square foot version and the 43,500 square foot version, to see that reducing floor area does not necessarily mean that you are really changing the effect of the building perceptually to someone who's on the street or sidewalk or necessarily even in the park by itself. And so I think our advocation has always been, if the number needs to move around a little bit to make a hotel or make a community space work better, then let's allow that to have a little bit of flexibility without going through another review process where more square footage has to be requested or that sort of thing. The other big part of our thinking with this is the term anchor space, which has been used a lot and is in some of the reports. And we feel pretty strongly that whatever happens on these parcels needs to be something which draws people to those parcels and generates a life of its own. Because I think the example of Willits is a good one. Willits was, I never heard too many people talk about Willits being exceptionally successful before Whole Foods came. It needed a critical mass to activate itself, and now that it has that, it's kind of growing and that sort of thing. So I think P&Z's vision is that Basalt wants to be a vibrant downtown on its own legs, and so we're looking at this from the standpoint more of what does the downtown Basalt really need in order to make that happen, rather than just be a place where a bunch of people live.
Okay. Is that a zoning question, not a square footage question?
From our standpoint, what it plays into is just trying to make sure that however we zone this allows for those sorts of things to happen. And when we look at the use tables, which isn't part of tonight's discussion and that sort of thing, we are thinking about those things, and we don't have an exact answer as to how big does this use need to be to succeed versus not. We're not, that's not up to us, that's up to someone to figure out, but we're trying to sort of work with what we can.
Seems like the use is, from that perspective, more important than whether it's 44,000 square feet or 50,000 square feet.
Exactly. And that's why we approach the floor area from the standpoint of, it's kind of an arbitrary number if you just say, here's what it is. But our feeling was, if we say, this is what kind of a building is gonna fit within our town, as far as the size and mass and all of that, that it's up to somebody else to figure out kind of how that needs to work to do whatever it is that they're proposing to do around the framework that we've created.
Bernie?
Yes, I have some questions for Tom. How defensible is this kind of approach if you get to the point where you have a definite disagreement with the parties, the owner, developer, and the town? Developer says, well, it's highly volumetric, and it's got these wonderful wagon wheels from Western history. Why can't I build it, town? Is there a subjectiveness about this that would be less defensive? Because it says here, town council could provide further input on acceptable maximum allowed squareable footages any time during the planning and zoning. And that would seem to somewhat, counteract this idea of this kind of floating, vague enclosure of space thing.
Why don't I jump in from a planning perspective, and then Tom can jump in and kind of bracket it with the legal piece. The zone, what Dylan's speaking to is the actual zoning district itself, using the community serving zone district. And this is saying that at any time in the process, P&Z, the council could provide guidance on the square footage, just like this resolution does that, because it's saying, okay, if you picked A, it would say, okay, go ahead in the volumetric, but we would like low to aim towards 55,000 square feet. So that does what A says. And you could do it another way. For example, in the CSC zone district, you come in and you check in with the council to make sure that your community serving and the developer would have a pretty good idea at that time. And that would be another place where you could provide a square footage limitation. Again, you could do it at the sketch plan approval or the final approval. You could actually have that limit. You could review the plan and say, this is the number. And in some ways, Bernie, if you think about a PUD, that's kind of what we do in the town. So for example, a mixed-use project, the floor area is 2. And say, well, it's town center, it comes in with 26 acres and you gave it a limit of 500 dwelling units. And you actually gave that limit in the approval. You could do the same thing in the CSC zone district and give it a floor area when you were actually reviewing a particular land use application. So it's not that different in a way that we're doing now, except it's just kind of saying that at any time you can kind of give guidance about what you'd accept. And Tom will probably point out that this resolution has some repeated language. Of course, we can't do any zoning action by a resolution. We can't do any dollar appropriation by resolution. We can give direction, and this resolution does that. It has a couple places where it's not restricting low. We're giving low advice. Nothing prevents them from saying, okay, I don't want the CSC zone district. I don't want to go in that direction. I want to go with the PUD, or I want to do something else. It's just giving them guidance about what you would like to see and what has a good chance of being one of the things that you're looking for in a successful land use application.
Another question for Tom. What I'm thinking of the example was in Aspen, with the Aspen Art Museum, that by the time it got to the conceptual plan, some of the council members were having second thoughts, and my understanding was that the development group then threatened to sue them, and they backed down very quickly rather than pin their hopes on something as subjective as looks. And I'm questioning whether this provides the town the same legal defensibleness at a reasonable cost, the traditional zoning approach, as to take this much less defined approach.
So let me address it in three ways. There's 3 different things to think about here. Number one, a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, the town adopted an amendment to the code creating the CSC zone district. And while that zone district is available for use anywhere in the town, the application was submitted by Roaring Fork CDC in anticipation of a project that would not fit squarely within any of the zone districts we then had in the code. So the project has evolved, as we know, over time, and what you have in front of, one of the pieces of what you have in front of you here is to provide direction to P&Z as to potential amendments to that zone district, which does not apply that zone district to the Roaring Fork CDC property or anybody else's property. It just makes adjustments to it to make it more, how shall I say, realistic, or to address the potential development of the property in the entire downtown area that's come out of our town planning process. So that's a legislative decision if it's adopted by the council. And the legislative decision is not really subject to challenge in and of itself. It's legally, because it doesn't affect anyone until it's applied to their property, okay? And so the issue, I didn't follow it closely on the art museum, but my understanding is that the controversy occurred in the context of a specific application that was being considered by the council, okay? We're not anywhere near that at this point, okay? So the second piece of the puzzle is, as you may remember, last spring, Lowe came in and made a presentation to the town about a development concept that they had. And there was reaction to it, and there was, as I recall, the heart of it was, it's too much development. It's probably not going to work for us. And Lowe's basic attitude was, fine, tell us what you can live with, because we don't want to get involved in a process where we're going to be, running around the tree forever, trying to figure out what the town will live with and what we can do. So give us an idea of what you would like to see happen here, and we'll figure out if it's workable for us. That's the second piece of this. The third thing to bear in mind is that, and it's easy to get lost on this because of everything that's happened here with the our town planning process, et cetera, but nothing happens, yes or no, for the development of the CDC property or any other property until somebody submits a land use application and it's decided on by the town council. It's either approved or it's disapproved or it's approved with conditions. But in the meantime, there's no decision unless and until an application is submitted.
I guess my only concern, and I would expect your input, is not that we can theoretically disapprove it and then get sued and then get into a lengthy controversy where nothing happens except lawyers make a lot of money. I want to make sure that there are certain points that we know we can say no on some very firm legal ground, and then, when does that end? When does it become just a matter of debate?
Well, I'm not sure I fully understand your question, but this just gives direction. That's very clear that this is direction. It's the kind of direction I think Lowe, and I think staff understands that Lowe was asking for in connection with their potential to exercise their option and submit a development applications. Now, the council, I don't anticipate we're going to just say, okay, CDC property is now zoned CSC. It's going to be an option that's available for whoever wants to, whether it's CDC or Lowe or somebody else. They have the option to submit an application for development that would apply that zoning to their property. Or, as it says here, they may not want to do that. They could submit a PUD application, okay? So the council isn't in a position to make any final decisions on anything until you get a development application.
Okay, why? It says we can make suggestions on maximum allowed square footage under option A, but it says we could identify a maximum building square footage by FAR. So would we preclude any creativity under option B when under option A we could still tap it with a maximum
It's
square
referring to a
footage?
continuation of this advisory process. Again, so that, you know how it is with the development approval process sometimes. An applicant comes in, they're told, no, go back and fix it. They come in again, no, go back and fix it again. The idea of having input from the P&Z and the town council, the way we're doing it here, is to try to avoid a lot of that back and forth by giving direction. And what would happen under either one of those options is only the continuation of direction from the council, similar to what's in here now. It's a sense of the council of something council believes it could potentially approve.
we going to be expected to pass this resolution specifying either option A or B?
I don't know what Susan had
Yeah,
in
we
mind.
wanted the motion, our recommendation is to approve it with option A, so you need option A or option B. That's why the options are there.
Thank you.
Right? Others?
I'm just confused, Susan, then clarifying that section 1, up to 55,000 square feet.
Right. So maybe I should just try to wrap up kind of a summary of what the resolution does. So the resolution 1 is trying to give direction to Low and the CDC, so that's in section 1. It's saying, we're looking for a land use application up to 55,000 square feet. So that's what that one says. Section 2 is saying, you heard the P and Z's presentation at the last meeting on how they wanted to approach the zoning, and you're saying go forward with that. Section 3, you're trying to give the P and Z direction on whether or not to have a specific square footage limitation in the zoning itself. And what option A is saying is, you don't need to do it in the zoning. That doesn't preclude us from giving a recommendation on floor area at any time. Option B is saying, we would like a floor area or some other kind of building square footage limitation, and look to section 1 for how to address the CDC property.
Okay, but back to section 1, we just looked at a presentation with 5,000 square feet or 43,000 square feet.
Right.
Yet this is written at 55,000 square feet. Is that number here to be discussed?
It's a number that you could, if you don't want that number, our staff understanding is that the council wanted to pick a square footage number, a target, to tell a developer of the CDC property at Low what to aim for. So we filled it in, based on the kind of the feedback that we had heard in prior meetings. We went ahead, put 55,000, and that's why we underlined it. And the model's up to. But the model is a good tool, I think, for, it was a good tool for the P and Z to understand kind of where they were going and what they were seeing and doing a check-in. And it's an opportunity for you to look at it and say, okay, when we were talking about it, I'm good with giving that direction. This is,
And it's, the 55,000 as it's currently made up is 15,000 square feet. Is it 15? Office, backbone media, 40,000 condo hotel. That's what their 55,000 would make up if it were Low that were to develop it.
now the zoning district itself is just it's gonna be more broad than that, so that's the direction to Low. So that's section 1. Section 1 is saying we're okay with the 55,000, go forward and do more planning with it. Gary?
What's the difference in height between 2 and 3 stories?
10 feet.
8.
Sorry,
What's the difference between two stories and 3 stories?
It's hard to tell on this.
Well, it's hard because, for example, the RMI building is a tall 2 stories, and so it's like 34 feet in height, whereas, the Teague building over there is 3 stories, the one that they actually occupy off of by Stubby's, and that's like 30 feet. So the zoning will address the height, and we can get more into the height itself, but do you want to add anything to that, Dylan?
typically for an upper story, we'd probably be looking at a 9-foot floor to ceiling height, and then probably another 2 feet to 2.5 feet above that for mechanical and structure, just as a sort of general architectural sort of guideline for a floor. And quite oftentimes in older buildings, you'll have a taller first floor element in there. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. It just kind of depends.
Well, because my biggest concern was, when the model is very helpful to look at you know, when you're looking at the heights, and, you know, I understand not putting all that height in the front and potentially put it in the back, but then, you know, trying to look at it that way, it's like, it's not, that one looks a lot higher than 2 floors and where RMI is right now. And so I was trying to figure out height differences between them, because it makes a big difference, because, you know, I'm not so super tied into the exact number of square feet. I'm more tied into the impact to the visual plane along the river and along the street. And, you know, so trying to get a height, like trying to figure out that height is, compared to what RMI is what I'm trying to get to. So they have 2.5 floors, which is basically 3 floors in the back. But what is the height of that compared to RMI currently?
Yeah.
You know the answer, otherwise I'd want.
Well, there's a lot of different ways. I mean, up in Aspen, they calculated from the center line of the asphalt to a ridge line, which is 28 feet, I think, on a 2-story, 2.5-story. There's different ways of looking at it. I looked at it from Midland Bridge at the arch and looked across, and you're almost at an elevation there that equals about 2.5 stories when you look across. Then you go down next to the boulders on the river and you look up, and you want to be able to look up over that building and see Basalt Mountain from the riverbank. And then from Homestead up there on the hill below the wilds, you want to be able to look down and see the river. And so when you look at, there's actually a set of power lines that runs along the road out there that is about what I think the height should be. And it probably is about 34 feet, 35 feet off the ground. So, you know, when story poles always are helpful, things like that, but rather than you negotiate or whatever, that the floors are 8 foot, 8 foot, 8 foot, or 10, 8, and 12 for mechanical. I mean, the other way to look at it is, and I think there was an article in the Aspen Times about a guy that bought the airspace above a 2-story building for $10 million so it didn't block the view of Aspen Mountain when he built his penthouse. I don't want to suggest that that's the direction we're going in, but I think that would placate a lot of concerns from different people from different points of view on how high these things are.
Well, that's why I'm trying to get the difference, to figure out, because RMI is a known height.
Right.
And so when you have a known height, what is the difference between what is proposed in this model? It's trying to give perspective, and that's all I'm trying to do here. I'm not saying, you know, I'm anti 3 stories. I'm anti something that's going to block views, and it's going to look like a big block building in front of that river. Because if you're walking, I mean, the whole point, everyone says, oh, you have so much park there. But if you have so much park along the river, and then you're just blocked by this monster 3-floor building at, you know, 42 feet or something like that, that's when I have more of an issue on this. And that to me is part of this zoning discussion, is to really kind of set, you're asking for, in one of the things, like a 2.5 story, but what is the height of a 2.5 story compared to RMI? So that's the only question I have, and I'm not saying I need the answer right this second, but, you know, that's where I'm gonna be, is really worried about that.
Height, sure, we said RMI is 34 feet,
I think that's what it is.
so I think that's a pretty good limit for me, because in my math, that could be 3 stories or 2 stories, right? 10, 9, 9 is 28 with 6 feet of mechanical and roof line, so I think nothing taller than RMI kind of works for me.
I was just gonna ask Susan why we couldn't set a maximum height limit of 34 feet.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's the next step for the P and Z, kind of to drill down on. I mean, it's kind of a clear message that you're concerned about height.
We're all concerned about height.
Yeah, and I just have a question too, because I know that Mike referenced earlier that we did pass a resolution talking about referring a purchase question to the ballot. So it's a couple things. First of all, it says in section 1 that we are basically encouraging, inviting Low Enterprises to bring us an application for 55,000 square feet. And so how does that work with the fact that we're saying that it's a possibility that we can purchase or send to the ballot in November a question to purchase the whole property if in fact there's an application in and zoning done and it's moving down the road? I don't get how we can in good faith say that, for one thing. And then I guess my other question is that, I mean, it's pretty apparent that the bigger issue is not the square footage or even the height, because that all gets worked on in an application process, but the uses. So
I'll take the first question, and the answer is because half of the current CDC site is shown as a park. And I don't think that's gonna change, and I don't think that the developer wants to own a park. And I think the community has made it clear that they want the town to own the park. So when I look at that ballot question, to me, I already know what half the ballot issue is. It's how to purchase a park. We just haven't answered the second piece, which is this the development envelope that you want to consider, and the uses that we're talking about tonight, do you think they're appropriate for
but
the
the actual
downtown?
question that we were gonna refer to the ballot, that the citizens asked us to refer, was to buy the whole thing. That was
Yeah, but the resolution that you passed said all or a portion of.
all or a portion.
Right, so
So
we
this-
don't know yet. That's why we wrote it that way last week, or 2 weeks ago.
Ballot question won't be able to say all or a portion.
No, it won't.
Right.
Have to be for some
One of those
specific
two.
amount. So what Mike is talking about is the lead up to the question, and there's never been direction from council to get us ready to buy the whole thing. In fact, in last spring, the council said, no, we're not buying the whole thing.
Right.
So I don't think there's any inconsistency here.
Yeah.
So it would be one question or the other. It would
Yeah.
either be
Yeah.
half of it, 3/4 of it, or
Yeah,
all
well,
of it.
we get
Okay.
down the road and make that decision.
Right. And so I think the other thing is it's really hard for me to talk about the physical limitations on these buildings because I think the really bigger issues for the community, and I think for most of us sitting here, are the uses. And whenever we are asking, I mean, where is the part about the uses? Is that somewhere else, traveling a parallel path? Because that's not in here tonight.
Well, the uses are,
I mean, you're saying that's what
well,
the
the
use.
uses,
They're gonna
Dylan-
get to that.
Are we gonna get to
Presented-
that?
The uses are right up there on the
well,
board.
Dylan presented the discussion about how we were gonna address uses at the last meeting. So the uses are gonna be included in the zoning that you're gonna see according to the schedule that's over
I
here.
mean, and we already know because it's what Jim DeFranci is gonna present, is a business office.
Well, the
and
zoning's
45
gonna
lots.
be a bigger
It's gonna-
list of uses for all of the parcels. It's gonna have an anchor use, one or more anchor uses, for the parcels, and,
Similar to what you have up
But are you talking, when you're talking
Yes.
Lowe's, you're not talking all the parcels, you're just talking this parcel,
No.
right?
when we're talking about the zoning
I'll get the
piece-
answers from
Okay,
staff.
section 1 is just low. That one's just the
That's right.
CDC. That's it. The other sections most of the other sections are all of the our town properties. Section 3 is dealing with the zoning for all of the our town properties, which is the CDC property, Lions Park property, Marino Park property,
Gotcha.
and the BCC property. And there's going to be volumetric regulations to do, where can the building be? And 2, there's gonna be uses that go along with the zoning.
Got it, okay,
So
yes.
I didn't have answers, but you just answered the question that I had. That we're directing P and Z to look at a holistic plan that includes all these parcels that will be a variety of uses, and we can pick and choose what uses we want to put on what parcels at the appropriate time. I mean, if we say, okay, I'd really like to see more affordable housing on that site, but other people would say, well, that's not the highest and best use of that expensive riverfront property, we should put it over here on Marino. Okay, so we've kind of solved that problem of this use here. We don't, I think sometimes we get trapped in this little bubble of this property and this application and all this other stuff, and we don't really look at what the potential is on the other 5 or 6 or 8 acres, whatever's left. I think the threshold issue for most people in Basalt is, are they going to accept density in downtown? Because that's what this is going to drive. And this zone district, this, heights, the volumetric calculations, the uses, and that's been the problem with trying to get the downtown core revitalized. It hasn't necessarily been, the big sucking noise over to Willits. It's been a community will to not sort of densify our quaint little downtown. Well, maybe quaint little downtowns are fine, but it's time to get back to the issues with RAFTA. We have more jobs down here, we get cars off the road, and there's more seats opened up to go on the crowded up Valley bus. That's where I'm at, is trying to look at this thing in a bigger context. The back and forth, it's funny, if you sit here long enough, everything goes full circle, right? We almost got to the end of a process with 150,000 square feet staring us in the face when we weren't in the land use application necessarily close, and then the citizens weighed in. That's not untypical. And we've gone through this year and a half or so. I looked up some old emails. It was interesting from 14 and 15. I found kind of a petition that was sent out in April and a year and a half or so ago, and it had about 300 names on it. And it's not a petition, obviously, but it's an indication that we were in the process. And now we're saying, okay, we've heard everybody, we've got a model, we've done just about everything we can possibly do. And now you're asking us to just send it to P&Z and come back with their recommendations for a global point of view on downtown Basalt. I think I'm ready to go there, because there's going to be plenty of public dialogue. Well, it is. They're looking at Marino, and they're looking at Lyons, and they're looking at this, and it's going to carry over into the rest of downtown.
This is just for CDC parcel, correct?
Not section 3. Section 3 is dealing with all of the parcels and the zoning on all the parcels. Section 1 is the CDC parcels.
If I can just say, let me just say one more thing. I think that Gary has hit on something that would really make our lives easier, which is when it looks like it's the CDC parcel, walks like a CDC parcel, quacks like a CDC parcel resolution, and then there's other things in here that are really about the bigger picture, which is what we should be talking about in the first place. It doesn't look like that's what we're talking about. So it would be, I think we all agree that we want density downtown. I think where we disagree is throwing in the CDC parcel specifically when what we really want to be talking about is the overall zoning of downtown so that we can densify the Clark's Market parcel. Yes.
So wherever it talks about CDC in here, and that's sections 1 and 5, and 1, 4, and 5.
And 3A.
And the whole beginning.
3 is it's mentioned, but wherever you see reference to the CSC zoning district, that's general. Okay? Now, we did have direction from the council to address both the entire area and in the CDC parcel in particular.
Okay, I think
That's
Rick
why
is,
they're both in
actually
here.
Rick has hit on exactly what the communication problem is with some of these resolutions, and that is that some of us are looking at this as specifically pointed at the CDC and inviting the developer, please, please, please come with your application, and simultaneously trying to say, this is what we would like the downtown zoning to look like. And I am not comfortable with those all being in the same soup pot. Yeah. Bernie, I'm sorry.
One thing along my line of questioning, Tom's answers were very useful. Something that makes me more comfortable says section 4, section 4, this resolution does not reflect any land use approvals for the development of the property. Neither the town nor CDC is bound by the direction contained within this resolution. And that seems to give us and the developer plenty of flexibility. I'm not as opposed as Jackie is to
given the 18 months we have spent on this and the incredible public process and the incredible expert and citizen process in the CDC, with coming up with something for the CDC land and the land on the river. If you want, I would almost do it the reverse. If you want a more generalized discussion of the whole area later, I think it's better to do it like this resolution puts it to us. But that's my feeling. I'm not adverse to the way this is put to us.
Well, I would like to see them separated because I think it's easier to have a conversation with Dylan and the Planning Commission about zoning in the downtown rather than a CDC application. Because it, you know, these are always prefaced, these recitals are always prefaced with, and then you agreed in Resolution 19 and Resolution 34 and Resolution 55 and Resolution 04. And it's this one more of those things that we're expressing concern about, of like leading a path. And I just think it would be easier and cleaner government if we kept specific application requests separate from zoning, because we don't want this to look like we are zoning for an applicant rather than the community. Yes, Tom?
Zoning change and the CDC in particular are not separate, in the sense that the current CSC zone district was, while it's available generally, was adopted at the request of Roaring Fork CDC, and as a result of the evolution of what is envisioned for that property, the zone district as currently embodied in the code doesn't work well.
Right.
And so, in anticipation of what Lowe might want to request, it's not just a matter of saying X number of square feet might make sense, it's also a matter of amending that zone district to be consistent and provide them with the opportunity that they're looking for to develop the property in accordance with a CSC zone district, but recognizing that as currently written, it doesn't work.
But aren't we talking about CSC zone district for the entire downtown?
No, you're not zoning it. I mean, it's, any zone district provides, like on the issue of uses, for example, it's a list of options. It doesn't say, here you have to do this on this piece, and here you have to do this on another piece. It provides the parameters, the range of options available, just like any other zone
It's only
district
for
in
the
town.
CDC parcel that we're talking.
Pardon me?
And it's only for the CDC parcel that we're talking.
What is only for the CDC?
This zoning conversation that
No, the zoning
Dylan is saying is.
It's both.
That's what I just said.
Right, and that's because they need the zone district for this property too.
Two, okay. So you're saying this is cleaner to have them both together,
Absolutely.
okay? That sounds like a legal opinion.
You asked me and I gave you an answer.
Okay, yeah.
I'll go out on a limb and move to approve Resolution
Do it.
9 with option 1.
Second.
Further discussion?
A, option A.
Second.
Well, I mean, I definitely am not gonna agree just to plain old say 2.5 stories without a height limitation or some, I mean, you know, I'm not comfortable with the way this is written on it, and so, you know, I 2.5 stories, what is that, 40 feet, 50 feet? I mean, to me, that's, you know, this does not solve it, and it is not clear, so, I mean, I don't even know how I'd even amend it, but.
I know.
34 feet?
Is that your further discussion?
Yeah,
Well, you got a motion, you can motion to amend, you,
Yeah,
Well,
I'd say just leave.
we're having further discussion, right?
Yes.
well, but they wanted, you got.
Gary, are you okay with the 34 feet, if that's the height of RMI?
That's why I'm saying, I'm trying to write up how I would amend it, but I just,
That would be one of mine. My other one was if if we were closer to 50,000 instead of 55,000 square feet, probably would be okay with that too.
Well, you got a motion, so the next step is to either
Yes.
vote on it or amend it.
Yeah, but we can do discussion.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. The, as you know, having been through land use applications, this is not a land use application. The zone district is what is possible in that area. This doesn't mean that if an application on this parcel or an application on the Basalt Center Circle parcel comes in and it's too tall, we can't say it's too tall. But in the zone district, if you give them the parameters, as Dylan was discussing earlier, higher properties might be appropriate on the BCC parcel than on this parcel. So in trying to make this the answer to a specific land use application, that, then you've got the kind of worries, that Jackie's talking about. And that's not what this resolution is about.
Except for there is a 55,000 square foot limit. So we're not just magically just putting a zoning, we are putting a limit. And where 2.5 stories does not have a limit, the 55,000 square feet is a limit. And so, if they come in with 54,999, are we setting ourselves up for, I know, legally, don't worry, I know totally legally not. But you are setting the expectation that we're okay with.
It's an up to figure, we're saying up to.
Right. Right. I mean, to me, I'm not comfortable with the 55, and I'm not comfortable with 2.5 stories unless we put a height limit on it. And that's just where I am at.
So, anyway, we have some kind of amendment on the floor, which
Not
I've
yet.
lost track of.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, was there a motion
Oh,
for
we
an
don't.
amendment?
I
I
thought
didn't
we
hear.
We don't
it.
have an amendment yet, he
Oh,
was
you didn't
talking
really
about
make
it.
an amendment.
I
Yeah.
didn't-
All right.
We have a
Is there an
discussion.
amendment or not an amendment? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay.
Nay.
All right, thank you.
Did you have more for
Can I
us,
see
by
the
the
name
way?
again, please?
We got lots more, but we have more meetings too, so.
Okay,
this
the
isn't
nays were
last time
Gary
you
and I.
guys get to
And
talk
Mark.
about the specifics.
I was
of
nay.
this.
Your
Were
name.
you a nay?
Yes.
I thought so.
He was okay.
It was 4-3.
Let's get on to the really.
It was 4-3? I thought it was 5-2.
Rob voted no.
Oh, okay, I missed that. Sorry. I'm not very helpful.
No, so there, who was the four?
It was, can you raise hands for the ayes?
Ayes. Yeah,
Herschel.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, where are we? Resolution 9, a resolution of the town. Oh, we just did that. I'm sorry.
Let's do that one again. That was fun.
I have a
Ask
question.
you about the
Should I go in the audience for this one and support my neighbor, or should I recuse myself, or what's that?
Are you recusing?
I don't know. It's
Is
not
this
that
money
big a
in your
deal to me.
pocket?
Can we do a sales
If
tax?
you're
you're not
recusing, you can
recusing.
step out. If you're not
You need-
recusing,
Yeah, but there's a healthy living sales tax that you might want to have to avoid.
Should I sit out there and give her my support?
you're not supposed to absent yourself from the room.
Right.
Yeah.
I have
You're
no,
not recusing if you're in the room.
I'm recusing because this lovely lady is my neighbor.
That from the address. Okay, it's first reading of
Defend my neighbors
ordinance 10, approving an easement agreement for the construction of a deck or similar structure in a public drainage easement on Lot 5, River's Edge, Addition 180 Riverside Drive, which is Rick's neighbor.
Yes,
Got
thanks. It is first reading of an ordinance that would approve of an easement agreement to allow for the construction or a deck or a similar structure in the public drainage easement that is on the property at 180 Riverside Drive. As background, there's a 20-foot public drainage easement that was dedicated on the east side of the property at 180 Riverside Drive, and you've got a map in your packet, but this is also showing it up here. This is Riverside Drive as it makes the curve around. Here is 180 Riverside. So there's a 20-foot public drainage easement that was dedicated on the plat. There are no public drainage improvements that exist in this easement. So, staff did some research and we discussed with people that were involved in the original drainage improvements, and they indicated that Basically, the easement was there if there were to be additional curb and gutter placed on Riverside Drive, and that easement could accommodate some additional drainage improvements. Staff checked in reviewing the application with the Public Works Department to see if near-term plans to install any drainage improvements on Riverside Drive, and they indicated that they did not have any such plans. So staff has worked out a draft easement agreement with the applicant that would indemnify the town in the future if we had to remove or damage the improvements that were proposed by the homeowner in the case that we needed to put drainage improvements in the site. So staff actually would recommend approval of the ordinance, setting up the easement agreement on first reading. We would suggest taking any comments that Raina has, who's the property owner, and then also taking public comments and providing council discussion. Raina, do you have
anything else?
additional comments?
The only thing I would add is, when we bought the property, one of the things that we noted with the public drainage easement is that it's the length of our property, but it ends, doesn't actually go anywhere. So, not that that should affect whether the town ultimately decides it wants to do anything, but there would be more work that needed to be done for any improvements to be put there, because the Smith's property on the other side doesn't have any easements that we were able to find. So.
Is there a swale?
There's no swell. There's a trampoline at the end of it. You can
So, but, I mean, basically, this is, it's an easement. The town owns just an easement, a drainage easement. It's
Correct.
your property,
It's our property, correct.
so.
And we're just looking to put either a back patio or deck or,
Is it gonna be an on-grade?
we haven't designed it, because we wanted to make sure that it would be acceptable to do anything before we spent time and money on designing it. We were thinking,
Height limit?
Yeah, it would still have to meet the setback requirements, so, there's a 10-foot setback there. So if it was going to go into that 10-foot setback, it would have to be close to on grade, within 30 inches.
So it may not be in the envelope then?
Well, a patio or on-grade deck can go outside the setbacks, but if it's going to be an upper floor deck, it would have to stop at the setback.
and it wouldn't be, what we're looking at is we have sliding glass doors at the back that are 1.5 steps up from the ground, probably at that grade, but maybe a step down, so.
Maybe 12 inches up.
12 to 24 inches is what we're thinking, but again, we haven't designed anything.
And in my experience, if something should happen that we need that easement, it should be your expense to remove the deck.
And that's what's in,
That-
well, what's,
I believe so, yes.
Go ahead.
anybody else?
Motion to approve.
Second.
That was a motion by
Do we have
Rob,
to
it
set-
sounded like a
Sorry.
second by
Do we have to set the second?
Herschel.
Yeah, it's first reading, so you'd need to set the second reading.
Mayor, I move that town council approve resolution,
Ordinance.
Ordinance 10.
10.
as ordinance number 10, 2016, first reading, set public hearing, second reading for March 8, 2016.
Okay, and there was a second by Herschel?
I still second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you.
Go forth and build.
I guess
Well,
we
not
are,
yet.
Not
They
yet.
gotta go
going
through
to ask
another
for a
reading.
motion to go into
Oh.
executive session, which means we're gonna be talking to our attorney about something. So thanks, everybody, for coming.
So,
See some of
Mayor,
you at
Take a little break.
Saxon's tomorrow.
do you want to move to go into executive
Unless you
session?
have a pink slip.
Move.
Right.
Yeah.
So Jackie, we're going to move to
Oh.
go into executive session in
gotta be a
accordance
new
with
hobby.
CRS 24-6 4024B.
Second.
Oh
And E.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.